Other than the benefits of networking, which you already stated, are there any tangible benefits for the company in terms of profitability and revenue in joining the RSPA?
Joining the RSPA in itself doesn't bring any benefits. It's what you do after that. There are loads of members of the RSPO. It's just an organisation. It's whether you actually source certified sustainable palm oil. Yeah.
Because the scorecard's publicly accessible, so obviously consumers can see how far up is higher.
In terms of having a higher rating, why, other than sort of non-tangible benefits to the environment, why as a firm is it good for you?
The reputation.
Yeah, public image.
Therefore driving more sales and therefore driving, better reputation.
Well, yeah, obviously with joining RSPO and with implementing it, you have an absolute advantage, and through a good communication, then you can say we are certified RSPO and therefore environmentally friendly. And by doing this, you just exclude some people from the market who can't just claim this, and therefore you can, because it costs more in terms of basic costs, then you can compensate this fact by having much more shares on the market and loyal people who would buy your products on the long term. So, and then you can start new projects with this kind of solid basis of consumers.
Yeah, in terms of profit as well, you do have a lot of companies who, a lot of them only use kind of these very high up, very pricey companies. They only use really well-sourced ingredients for their products. And it means that you can communicate to an entirely new market that may only use sustainable means for their products. And there is definitely becoming an increase in that amount of companies as we're going through time. Does that answer your question?
Yes.
Thank you.
Okay, great. So we'll go back to group 2 for another question.
Yes, Sam, group 2.
Shall I ask a question? Yeah, Daniel, group 2. About the CSPO, you mentioned that right now we have production using about 25% CSPO in our products, and you suggest increasing it to between 75 to 100% CSPO, so essentially only CSPO company product. I was going to ask whether entering the market this late, as there are 3 major companies that you mentioned with Mars and the other 2, how are we going to be able to enter the market if they've already established very good trade agreements with the current producers of CSPO, and how are we going to compete on the cost?
Well, firstly, there's a surplus of certified sustainable palm oil available, but manufacturers aren't taking advantage of it. It's been supplied, but it's putting them off supplying it because no one's taking advantage of it.
And also, you can just say that there is not only one market for sustainable palm oil. So the applications of sustainable palm oil are multiple, as you can see, with lipsticks and everything. And because we are set in such diverse number of countries, we are quite safe in this position compared to Mars or...
Yeah, I think, as you can see from this, although we have picked Dairycrest as well, we picked Avon and Mars actually to illustrate in this question and answer session that there are a lot of companies that are not in the dairy industry, and therefore we don't think that they're a direct competitor, which means that we're not actually entering into the market late. We are entering in with some people, but as we believe we're in the cutting edge of our game with this RSPO, because it's not that well populated yet, we think that there could be many, many benefits, and we don't think there would be an incredible amount of competition. As to say, if you were to enter the computer market using some kind of sustainable chip or something like that. Do you know what I mean?
Additionally, it's only focused in Europe at the moment because places like India and China are kind of developing, and eventually they will come into the palm oil market. But at the moment, it's kind of Europe-based, and so it's not a global kind of thing yet. So it's not too much of an impact coming in this late, I think, if you get what I mean.
Right.
Also, I would just add that because we are such a big share of the market, basically if small shareholders of the market just implement this concept, but no one follows, then it doesn't really work. But if we as a big group implement it, then the others will have to follow, because we have such a big share of the market. So it kind of worked this way more than the first who did it. It's more like how big your impact is.
So you mentioned there with India and China perhaps not recognising the benefits of using sustainable palm oil. What kind of market share does the company hold in the less developed countries where perhaps environmental concerns aren't raised and this RSPO venture might not pay off?
Lactase is a Europe-based
Europe only.
company.
Yeah.
It was started in France and it's literally only in the UK and
Italy as well.
yeah.
I think a
Right.
big part of that is India and China, two countries you mentioned, are part BRIC. Brazil, Russia, India, China. Now these are emerging economies, so it might be that they aren't quite ready to get sustainable sources because it's more expensive and because maybe they're focused on a machine type production instead of a garden one. So instead of the growth of businesses, they just want product, which is why we get so much manufacturing from China, from India. So I think the status of the economy, which the EU has the opposite of, goes a long way into saying why they aren't using sustainable palm oil or why they're not using lactalis at the moment.
And is the company prepared, as in physical manufacturing, to completely switch to sustainable palm oil? Is there any kind of process of manufacturing equipment that we would have to purchase?
No.
Is it all?
No,
It's
it's
just
just
switching.
sustainable.
Yeah. The thing about sustainable palm oil, it's not the palm oil itself, it's the where and how.
How it's
Yeah.
sourced
Yeah.
and where it's supplied.
It's like, it's the where and how.
So a lot of the things that you see, well, a lot of big problems are kind of deforestation, these environmental issues. Like Jeevan said, it's not actually the product itself that will affect anything, but it's how we source it and how we ethically manage it. So we can use exactly the same as what we've already got. It's just where it comes from that really matters to us.
Also, I think our company is quite ready for this kind of change because we are a European-based company. From a European firm's point of view, we are targeting European consumers, which are already into this kind of green market with loads of products, with cleaning products and everything. And I think just because we are dealing with food now, I think they are ready also to take into account what they're buying for themselves. So I think it just makes sense in Europe, but then I'm not sure if it does for India or China.
Okay.
Does that answer your question?
Yes, thank you.
Okay, so just break down the next couple of quick questions. So we'll go to group 1 for the next question.
Sam from Group 1, not Group 2. You mentioned that few people have heard of RSPO, and you've also acknowledged that the costs to implement RSPO will be really high. If that's the case, then what benefit can be derived from the use of sustainable practices compared to the costs? And who's going to market RSPO for us? Will anyone really care if we're first or if we're last? Or is it better to come in later on when it's actually been established and it's a thing?
Can we limit the responses to just a couple kind of key points and then we can move on?
Okay, so for that example, I'd say look at companies like Cadbury. They have, one of their reasons that they got a big reputation, or Green and Blacks actually, also food. One of the reasons is they are fully fair trade. So why don't we replicate this effect with RSPO? It's possible, it's kind of the same thing. In terms of marketing, I think it's very easy, as we proved a few slides forward, to actually do a very simple thing to brand our products, just put a logo on. I mean, it's more complicated, there's a lot of things to go through. But if it's just as simple as putting a logo on a packet, which it may be, although it's not something we've fully looked into, then I think it's really easy for us to better market to the public.
Okay. Great, we'll have to sort of leave that on there. And then we'll go to group 3 for another question.
James, group 3. Obviously you keep on referring to how you're thinking about like the long term. So why don't you target the BRIC countries then, which are emerging and have the biggest proportion of the world's population?
Okay, so I don't think it's possible that these BRIC companies, they have in Europe and the UK and more kind of the Western economies, we are very, very keen on where we get our products from and how we use those products and how they've been sourced. Along with the economic factors, Brazil, Russia, India, China, so the emerging economies, I think how they socially are is very, very different. So I don't think they care as much where they get them from because they're very used to this production line. And apart from world leaders, I think it's very possible that the UK and Europe probably care the most about where their products are sourced in comparison.
Also, you can't just compare the rate of growth and their income because obviously they are growing at a very fast rate, but that therefore they're not ready to buy extra or like top of range products. And so I think it makes sense, but we have to wait until they are fully consuming and, you know.
Okay, great. We'll probably have to stop the questions there.